Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features X-Men number 72, cover dated February 1998. The cover is by Carlos Pacheco, inked by Thibert and colored by Liquid. And it features very clearly Wolverine versus Marrow, as the caption declares. So the cover image is not too bad, but there are some issues with it. So first thing is there's something jumping out at you about Wolverine's head there that's a little bit off. Well, it is the flare here of his head mask that is a little bit strange in the way that Pacheco's drawing it. He's giving a fair bit of room there for the ear to pop out. So that is distinctive. And also Liquid, by colouring in the ear space yellow, kind of makes it stand out and makes the kind of head mask look wrong. Something else that is maybe a little bit off, and this can be on the one hand down to artistic license and on the other hand just stretching that a little bit too much, is if you look at Wolverine's waist there, how big or small of a waist is that? Like, what is that, like 18 inches waist? And then look at the size of his shoulders. So you've got a shoulder muscle just stretched out to here and going all the way over there. That's like a meter or more in terms of the broadness of his shoulders. So that's like, those are crazy proportions. So as I said, like a couple of things on the cover here that when you pay attention to them don't look quite right, but otherwise it's a pretty ferocious expression he's given Marrow on her face. I think that looks good, and I like the rendering of the surface and texture of those bones that are jutting out of Marrow. So let's open this one up to the first page. There are 24 pages of story and art in this particular issue, so there's a lot packed into it. And the story opens in Salem Center, New York. It's the X-Mansion. I like that top-down angle there. We've got the swimming pool out back as well, the driveway there in the front, and there's a first-person narration. Who's speaking? Well, it is Marrow. "You like the dark, don't you?" she says. "Of all the sheep hopping around Xavier's little school, you're the one who thrives in cramped, nasty spaces with damp and dead cold. I can tell you, I can smell, you relish this sort of thing. You know how to have fun. Not like her. Storm would rather be playing with her flowers. She thinks she understands them, thinks she has the formula to control them. Clip the parts that don't grow right, don't grow pretty, and they go away forever. But the Wind Rider's wrong." So it's an interesting opening. I like the visualization of Storm there, pruning her potted plant. She's only got one left in the attic after Bastion stripped the place of all fixtures and fittings. And this is an interesting kind of layout here, where we've got the end of Wolverine's cigarette or cigar, and it is burning low there in the middle of all of this. Turn the page and we get a nice layout on this page, where we see on the ground here this weed that's growing up through the floor. It's kind of a weed, it's a kind of a fungi, and Marrow continues. She's wrong and she knows it. Sun, water, light, love, love. That's what she wants to believe makes things grow proper, but she turns her pretty eyes away from the truth. Things grow in the dark. Hate is more powerful than the sun. Sewage replaces water. Weeds strangle flowers. And no matter how many times she cuts back the wild vine, it always grows back. That's why you're here. So this picks up from the end of the previous issue, that cool ending. Wolverine there in the dark, smoking down that, is it a cigarette or a cigar? He's just listening. He drops the cigar. I think it looks more like a cigar there, onto this fungi, and Marrow continues so she doesn't have to get the grime under her nails, trying in vain to clip so she doesn't have to get dirty again, so she can stay the goddess of gardening. I like that phrase. In her empty greenhouse. Besides, according to the whispers I've heard, when you cut something, it stays cut. Now, this would have been maybe better on a page turn, but however, we have our title there, Life Lessons Our creative team here: Joe Kelly writer, Carlos Pacheco pencilers, Art Thibert inks, Richard Starkings Comicraft on the digital lettering, and Liquid on the digital colors. So nice splash page there. Wolverine having dropped the cigar down on the fungi there. You can see it smoking on the floor. Isn't that right, Master Wolverine, sir? Says Marrow. Suppose it is, kid, he says. Yeah, so a pretty good opening sequence, I think. Nice art. I think Joe Kelly does a better job in this particular issue than the previous two. So maybe that's to say he has more control over the plot, whereas previously he was working over Scott Lobdell plots and trying to find the voices of the characters. I think he gets the voices better in this particular issue. So we have in effect a kind of a 6-panel layout here with just this double panel here in the middle, and we have this confrontation between the two. So there's a lot of talk here, and Wolverine basically says to Marrow, he gives her an ultimatum: if you plan to stay here, you're going to live by our rules, period. End of attitude, end of discussion. You can't handle that, then crawl back to where you came from. Save everyone a world of hurt. So she retorts like a stroppy teenager: you're boring me, old man. We both know that you're not here to persuade me to be a good little girl, so why don't we cut the bull and get down to it? So she pulls a bone out of her back. He pops his bone claws. Big grin on his face. I like this. Kids today, he says, no respect for old-fashioned conversation. This is very good. And then he concludes by saying good. So he's looking forward to this scrap that has been brewing since Marrow turned up at the X-Mansion. But when we turn the page, we don't get the fight. We have to wait for it. And instead the scene shifts to Jerusalem. And Carlos Pacheco really good at drawing spaces. He's got a great command of 3-point perspective in particular. I can imagine the man always with his T-square and set squares, gridding out panels and pages in order to work in all of these architectural spaces that he designs. I think he does a very good job of giving us a sense of perspective space in his comics. So this is a person that we haven't seen for a while, not since Legion Quest in the X books. It's Gabrielle Haller, and she's writing a letter to Senator Kelly about finding and freeing Charles Xavier wherever he's being held in prison, because that's a plot thread that needs to get picked up again. And then when she emerges out onto her balcony through the sliding doors, there's someone hovering in the air. And that someone says, sometimes, Ambassador Haller, freedom, like the truth, is little more than an illusion, don't you think? So who could this be? And look at the cloak is a little ragged there. Is this a man or a woman? Well, we'll see shortly enough. But this, if this is the cloak, then maybe that should give us a clue as to who it is, with the Star of David implied there. And then we're back at the Xavier Institute. Now, in the previous couple of issues, I had criticisms of Steven Seagal's characterization of some of the X-Men, but more particularly Joe Kelly, especially in respect of issue 71. I felt he wasn't getting the voices of the characters right, but I do have praise for him in terms of what he's doing with Cannonball here, aka Sam Guthrie. So Cannonball has come down to the entrance to the basement, which is where he knows that Marrow is keeping herself, and he's thinking to himself, don't know why I'm so fixated on Marrow. Think that it's bothering me that she just holed herself up in the basement without anyone earnestly trying to reach out to her. She's got a serious rep as a bad egg, but she did help Iceman during Zero Tolerance, and after all, she is just a kid. So if none of the upperclassmen are going to extend the olive branch, it might as well be me. Besides, it might be nice to have someone lower on the food chain to boss around. So I like that. I like the way that we're getting into Sam's head there. And there's also implicit in this the fact that he was a New Mutant, and that he has seen before young teenage characters needing help, guidance, mentorship, in order to overcome their traumatic backgrounds, as well as his time in X-Force, a more martial, a more aggressive X-Team. So he's used to characters like this. I mean, think of Feral, for example. So he opens the door to go down and reach out to Marrow, and then it's slammed shut right in front of him. And who's done that except for Storm? "What are you doing, Samuel?" she asks, coming down the stairs. So he's surprised, and he says, "I was just going to talk to Marrow, play welcome wagon." And she says, "Samuel, I know that in your heart you feel compelled to reach out to Marrow, but she's not like us. She's a terrorist with no regard for life, no compassion. I've seen her attempt to kill hundreds to further her goals," and that's a reference back to issue 325, when Storm seemingly pulled out Marrow's heart and killed her, but Marrow had a second heart. So Sam starts to demur, "But Aurora, don't you think?" And she cuts him off. "You were not there, Samuel. You did not see what I saw. As X-Men, we're pledged to bring man and mutant together by defending humanity against those who would use their inborn abilities for evil. Marrow endangers this mission." But Sam isn't happy with that speech. "Yes, sir, Ms. Monroe, I get it, fine. Rule number 1, the senior officer is always right. Rule number 2, see rule number 1. Thanks for clearing that up. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go get myself, remind myself why I'm proud to be an X-Man." So, we're getting a little bit more of the Sam Guthrie that we remember from Fabian Nicieza's run on X-Force, and I'm glad to see his return, and less of the Jejune kind of starstruck hayseed Cannonball that Scott Lobdell wrote when he brought him over into the X-Men team. So Storm here is standing guard outside the door that leads down to where Marrow is, and where she knows that Wolverine is gone. So that's also part of her interruption. She didn't want Sam to interrupt what Wolverine was doing down there with Marrow. Being an X-Man will always be something to be proud of, Samuel, she says, but being a leader, that's another issue entirely. So she's not being straight with him. Meanwhile, 2 floors up and to the left, there's a big hole in the roof from issue number 70, that emergency landing with Cyclops when he had the nanotech bomb in his gut. And we've got Beast directing Joseph there regarding these steel girders, and there's a little back and forth between them. And Hank puts his foot in his mouth when he says, what does he say? Cannonball actually causes a problem when he shoots away from this encounter with Storm. And Hank says, "The boy smashes through the roof once an emergency, so now he forgets how to use the front door." Sigh, no, he probably just blowing off steam after all that's happened. Losing the professor, Gambit. And at the mention of Gambit, Joseph just violently finishes the job. "I'm finished," and storms off. So Beast there is wondering, I'm surprised more of us aren't doing the same. And then we pick up with Cecilia Reyes and Maggot. So they're having a little kind of chat here, and Maggot is trying to get on Cecilia's good side, trying to cheer her up a little bit as well. But what I notice here about Maggot is that he seems quite thin in this particular drawing by Carlos Pacheco. Again, very thin waist. And I'm just wondering, is this Pacheco's artistic style that we're seeing here different from Chris Bachalo? When whether it's either Joe Madureira drew Maggot, he drew him big and broad, and similarly Chris Bachalo, but Pacheco is drawing him quite thin, even skinny. And I'm wondering, is that down to artistic style, or is it something about Eenie and Meanie, his two cybernetic slugs, that when they haven't eaten, he becomes thin? Is it that? I'm conjecturing because I don't remember any of this from the past. Every time I pick up these issues from this period of the run, it's like reading them for the first time. So here now we finally get back to that fight between Wolverine and Marrow. and we're going to see Carlos Pacheco doing his version of a classic trope of Wolverine versus that goes all the way back to the original Chris Claremont and Frank Miller Wolverine miniseries, the 4-issue limited series from 1982, where Frank Miller, it's the classic Frank Miller full horizontal panel layout for fight scenes. And so you have classic iterations of that in that miniseries, especially issue number 4 when Wolverine takes on Shingen. And then you get it homaged by Paul Smith in issue 173 of Uncanny X-Men, and Barry Windsor Smith in issue 205 of Uncanny X-Men. And here we have Carlos Pacheco doing his version of a Wolverine versus in full horizontal panels. But the thing that I don't like about the layout here is this strange kind of framed border that we have for these panels. I'd much prefer there to be open gutters here instead of this framing that we have. That just doesn't work for me for whatever reason aesthetically. So the fight is on. Wolverine says to Marrow, "Too much yapping, not enough scrapping, kid," and he cuts her, slashes her in the face. So he's not holding back. Well, not very much anyway. Pity. If you weren't such a waste of matter, maybe we'd actually learn how to focus that rage. But what does a killer like you want with the X-Men? So she says, "Nothing. All you would do is muddy my cause with Xavier's dream. I've clarity. My birthright is to rise out of the Morlock tunnels and dominate the surface. I'm the mutant voice of tomorrow." And she misses him. And so Wolverine throws back at her, "Oh, for crimini's sake, I hope not. That would be just plain embarrassing." So he lands on the ground there, mostly in silhouette, and she turns around and comes at him again. Do you think that the Morlocks lived in upworlder filth because we enjoyed it? My people were denied by humanity the barest necessities of life: sun, clean air, and water, dignity. And she loses her dignity in this central panel where Wolverine just punches her right in the gut, winding her. And so she's on the ground coughing, and Wolverine has something to say to her. Funny, maybe we're talking about different Morlocks. Sure, they had it tough, probably tougher than your average mutant. Manhattan tunnels are a tough place to set your roots. But if there's ever been one thing that the Morlocks had, it was dignity. They had it in spades, which is more than I can say for a certain little terrorist. And again, that's a reference back to issue 325. You're a disgrace to your people. So that gets her blood boiling, and she flings those bones at him. And then the scene switches. So, I'm not sure what I think in truth of the constant cutting away from the fight scene. And that is something that's different from the Wolverine versus fights that Carlos Pacheco is homaging there with the horizontal panel layouts. Because in those fight sequences, whether it's the Frank Miller one, whether it's Paul Smith's, whether it's Barry Windsor Smith's, there was no cutaway. And that made for a much more immersive and entertaining, from a reader's perspective, fight sequence. So all this cutting away, it became a little bit irritating for me, but it's all in order to build towards a climax at the end of this issue. So then the scene switches back to Jerusalem, Gabrielle Haller's balcony. Who is it that's hovering there over the balcony except for Sabra? And this is intriguing. She's got a file, confidential file, because Sabra is an agent of Mossad, and the file is on Georg Oederkirch, reputed to be among the most accomplished forgers in Eastern Europe. His work is so precise, she says, as to baffle the most highly trained experts. But in the age of computer technology, even his considerable skills were not enough to maintain this decades-long ruse. What ruse? He created the identity Eric Lenscher for Magneto. And so Eric Lenscher is an assumed name. It's not Magneto's true name. So this is some retconning of a Scott Lobdell reveal that goes all the way back to Uncanny X-Men 304. So that is being undone, and it's being undone in relation to the revelation at the end of Uncanny X-Men 350 that Magneto's back, he's back, but Joseph is still around. So Sabra continues here saying, it's cold where we're going, so she's going on the trail of Georg Odekirk, exactly how one would expect Magneto's world to be, like the man himself. And then, what about Joseph? So Joseph is out for a walk after that, storming off from the repair work on the X-Mansion, and he's thinking about his life. Imagine it, the self-styled master of magnetism, the man feared by all the world, nearly throwing a tantrum whenever someone brings up Gambit or Rogue. So many feelings so long denied suddenly racing around my head, unfamiliar to me. Sorrow for what happened in Antarctica, guilt, loss, love, and longing for a connection, for one true friend. So Joseph, sad, lonely, wandering around, and then he spies Maggot, who's with Cecilia, and he thinks to himself there, in Antarctica, in that strange place, Maggot called me friend, even though I'm sure that we'd never met. We haven't had time alone since for him to explain. If he has some clue to the past I cannot remember about how I ceased to be Magneto and became Joseph, I must speak with him privately. Clearly he holds his own secrets. Perhaps when he's not so busy I'll ask him. So Maggot spots Joseph, and he's looking kind of meaningfully towards Joseph, but we don't get into his head in respect of what he knows about Joseph and Magneto and their connection. So then up in the sky we've got Cannonball. He's angry, so that's how it's going to be. Don't ask questions, keep your head down and smash through stuff when we tell you, Sam. And then he says aloud, but I'm not a kid anymore, I'm an X-Man. And you used to be a member of X-Force, Sam, don't forget that. And when Cable was lost and thought dead, you were the leader. So, I mean, come on, get it together. So he continues. Got a letter from Tabitha a few days ago, and that was shown in issue, or rather, that kind of crosses over to current issues of X-Force, as Mark Powers puts it. And so he paid a visit. My old friends in X-Force have done pretty good, striking out on their own. Storm and the rest want to have their little senior class club, then maybe I'll give up the X-Men. And so he's about to think probably return to X-Force, but he catches himself. Hold on a second, did I just say give up? And I like that kind of effect of him putting his foot out to stop himself in mid-flight, and then he turns back towards the X-Mansion. Papa's probably turning over in his grave hearing his oldest say something like that. I can't run off half-cocked just because I got stern talking to from Storm. If I don't want to be treated like a newbie, maybe I have to stop acting like one. And if that means going toe-to-toe with the team leader for what I believe is right, even if I do get busted down again, then he says aloud, then so be it. And this is much more in keeping with the Sam Guthrie of X-Force number 19, written by Fabian Niciezi. You'll find my review of that in the back catalogue of the channel. When he stood up to Charles Xavier, Professor X, his old principal, teacher, mentor, and when he was given a characterization of being much more confident than he has been when written by the pen of Scott Lobdell, let's say. So off he goes to face Storm. And then the scene switches to Romania at the foot of the Transylvanian Alps. A modest street, a modest home. It's this guy, it's the forger, Georg Odekirk. Georg Odekirk has been forging documents for so long, declares the third-person narrator. It is said that when he was born, he signed his mother's name to his own birth certificate. I like that. And turn the page. He's got a visitor, and it is Magneto. Like I said, he returned at the end of Uncanny X-Men 350. You'll find a review of that in the back catalogue of the channel. And he's in shock. So, merciful God, he exclaims, and Magneto says, no, you must have me confused with someone else, Georg. Mercy is not on tonight's program. Then we're back to the fight. I like this little detail of Marrow's cat's eye there as she's getting wilder and wilder. And also a new power that she's manifesting here, where we can see the bones in her fingers elongating, so they're turning into claws. And she is wildly saying, while hot blood feeds my heart, I will fight and claw and scrape and bite until you learn what that means. That she's the rage of all mutants, that all mutants feel for humanity. So Wolverine is impressed. Well, look at that. The little miss can control her bones when she's ticked off enough. So that's the score. Death, is that what you want? And she says, I want respect, and there can be no respect until debts are settled. A dead human for each dead mutant, a heart for a heart, blood for blood. So she's talking about the Lex Talionis, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, vengeance, revenge. So she strikes Wolverine with those elongated claws and licks his blood off the palm of her hand. I like that detail. It's disgusting, but it's well done. Tag, hairy, she says. See, hate works. Hate burns hotter than your pretty words and sleepy time dreams, and tastes better too. Hate is the engine, I'm the machine, and it will never ever stop. So I think Joe Kelly is doing a good job on Marrow. Let's continue. See what happens. The fight continues with those horizontal panels. I prefer this all black background if we're going to have any kind of a frame for these panels. The black is best. So Wolverine says, all right then, time to die. Time to take your poor excuse for a life so far and throw it down the toilet for a cause you don't understand and a hate you haven't earned. Time to die. But you're going to have to do it on your own, because I don't kill stupid, hateful kids. I kill soldiers. You kid, you ain't no soldier and you know it. That's why you came here. You could have died for your supposed cause down in New York City against zero tolerance. You could have challenged Storm anywhere, besides the school, but you didn't. Somewhere in that mess you call a brain, part of you wants something better, so you came here. And now, with the fight over and Wolverine having bested her and she on the ground, interesting switch in the layouts. Carlos Pacheco goes from all horizontal to vertical, and we get this really ambitious top-down angle here on Wolverine as he retracts his claws in order to give her a hand up, and he continues with his speech. He says, I'm your drill sergeant, the closest thing you got to God. My word is your gospel, your law, your life. Any deviation, a hint of trouble, a smell of dissent, and what you just went through is going to feel like summer camp. So she looks over her shoulder back at him and says, why? Why offer me this? A trick? I'm not one of the pretty ones. I'm not you and yours. Why? So he says, because in spite of what you are, what you've done, you remind me of someone I used to know more than I'd like to admit. Honestly, so of course he's speaking of himself. Honestly, I don't think you're going to last 2 weeks in my tender care, but I'll know we tried to save your life and I'll be able to sleep better. So she takes his hand, second chance to do things right, do things. So can it be so easy? Now I do like the fact that what we get on a page turn. Let's turn that page, see what happens. She stabs him right through the throat, and we're back to the horizontal layouts. The fight is back on. She tricked him. I think I'm doing quite nicely on my own, she says. You can scream now, Pops. Well, you can try. And so he's trying to scream, or he is screaming, but with his voice box cut open. And then you just get this animal roar or howl, and everyone hears it. Yeah, this is a great page. That was worth the price of entry. And then we're back in Transylvania. And the guy is begging for his wife's life. Magneto says, she'll sleep the sleep of the innocent. She's done nothing, but you, my friend, have betrayed me. And then he protests, and Magneto says, by your incompetence, Odekirk, do you remember what you promised me the night I came to you torn and filthy nearly a quarter century ago? I was searching for my beloved Magda, determined not to lose her, as I'd lost so many others in the fire that engulfed all of Europe during my childhood. The authorities were in pursuit of me for the crime of avenging my daughter's murder. I was willing to deny who I was, everything that my family died for, so that I could find one woman, so that I would not be caged again. So this is in reference to A famous backup story, Fire in the Night, by Chris Claremont and John Bolton in Classic X-Men number 12. You'll find my review of that in the back catalogue. And so he was in Ukraine when his daughter Magda died in a house fire, and he was prevented from going in by the villagers there. So he's made his way from Ukraine, or rather we're learning here from what Magneto is saying, that he made his way from Ukraine to Romania, that he was going west after that. And he says here, I was willing to deny who I was, everything that my family died for, so that I could find one woman, so that I would not be caged again. So this is his fabrication of a new identity, Eric Lensher. The Eric Lensher fabrication was a convenient means of ensuring that. You swore that that the forged papers were flawless, that your skills were unsurpassed, he says, but now you've proven to be a liability. Your work has been called into question by my enemies, and they will trace Eric Lensher, the Sinte, back to you. So Odekirk is aghast. That's impossible. The forgery was impeccable, but Magneto kills him. My secrets shall die with him. You gave birth to Eric Lensher, Odekirk, and tonight you've killed him. My secrets shall die with him. All that remains now is Magnus. And so I'm reminded of going all the way back to Uncanny X-Men 149 and 150, when that was the time when Professor X was reviewing to himself the fact that they knew so little about Magneto. They didn't know anything about his history. They didn't know his real name. And we're kind of going all the way back to that time here in what's happening with this returned Magneto, whoever or whatever he is. So Sabra arrives kicking in the door. She's got super strength. Up to the bedroom. Odekirk is dead. His wife there is aghast. And Gabrielle Haller, who's gone along as well, says, what happened to him? He crossed Magneto, says Sabra. Welcome back, Magnus. God help us all. And then we're back in the basement of the X-Mansion, where Marrow pulls the bone out of Wolverine's throat. Weak people get hurt, she says. I've already learned that lesson. Show me something I don't know. Is it that she's pulled it out of his throat, or did he pull it out, or is she getting... The shucked there suggests she pulled it out. But Wolverine starts growling. It's a sound that very few people have heard and lived to desperately try and forget. The guttural snarl of the Wolverine, as all trace of his humanity melts away, leaving behind the berserker, the barbarian, the bloodlust. So he goes into a berserker rage, pops his bone claws, and he's about to put them right into her brain. And I guess, well, she may have had two hearts. She very likely doesn't have two brains. And then he's interrupted by none other than Cannonball, who grabs him and slams him up against the wall. And then he drops down beside him and says, Logan, sir, oh gosh, please, don't wake up mad, please. And then the rest of the X-Men arrive. And Marrow here, it looks like she kind of scampers away. I like that kind of detail of her glowing eyes there, like cats, as she scampers down into the Morlock tunnels. Sam here yells at Storm. So he recognizes now why she slammed the door closed in front of him. So this is how the X-Men deal with problems. Sick Wolverine on a kid, so she's beyond anyone's help. Storm starts to explain, Sam, you don't understand, this was not supposed to. And then he cuts her off. What happened to compassion, to second chances? This wasn't just teaching Marrow a lesson. That was a cockfight. One of them could have been killed. If Logan didn't have a healing factor, he would have been it. And Beast, the voice of reason, tries to step in there. He's the most senior X-Man present. Sam, please, cleansing breaths. I'm sure that there's a perfectly sagacious explanation. And Sam isn't listening. Yeah, I get it. Second chances are out of style this year. So he's about to storm off. Meanwhile, Joseph here is examining, what is it? The ripped remains of, it's Wolverine's head dress. So he's picking it up off the ground. What's he thinking about doing that? Meanwhile, Storm starts calling after Sam. Sam, do not walk away when I'm talking to you, she shouts. Sam, he's not listening, and she steps on that weird fungus plant. And Marrow's gone. She's down in the tunnels, the Morlock tunnels, Eternity's gutter. And she's talking to herself. Stay, learn, grow, lies. Lies. And I shoved them right back down his throat. Lies had to be. So she's kind of a little bit on the one hand, and on the other hand, I'm not a part of that world. It could never want me. Too mean, too ugly. No room for me in that pretty dream. Who would want me? No one back there. Only here. Here is where I belong, what I deserve. So Callisto is still recovering from wounds received in Uncanny X-Men 346. And she asks Marrow, how was school today, dear? And Marrow replies, lying, it was fine, Callisto, just fine. I'm making friends. And Callisto replies using her true name. That's a good girl, Sarah. Good girl. So Marrow is betwixt and between. You know, she has some ambivalence about the possibility of learning something from the X-Men. Callisto wants her to go there, wants her to learn, but she really is a truant student and a hard case. And then the issue ends with these all vertical panels and a kind of a humorous reference to the Coen Brothers movie Fargo, where we've got this pregnant policewoman here, and they've discovered in Salem Center the dead homeless person who was killed and eaten in part by maggots, slugs, in the previous issue. And the female police officer says, I don't know who would do that to a man. The trail leads towards the woods, maybe towards the edge of that boarding school's property. But we're not talking human footprints here. This is going to be ugly, real ugly. So that's a pretty decent issue. Next, Joseph versus Sabra with maggots stuck in the middle. One page of letters here. There is a reference finally to Scott Lobdell leaving because one of the letter writers is asking about it. And the answer comes, as you probably know by now, Scott won't really be part of the future of the X-Men as he's focusing his considerable energies and talents on Fantastic Four. But Lobdell left after issue 3. And then there's reference here to Steve Seagal as Uncanny Rider and Deadpool and Daredevil scribe Joe Kelly having just arrived on Adjectiveless X-Men. And I think this is the issue where he's found his feet with the characters, and I think he's moved beyond Lobdell's plot. So he's doing his own stuff now, always with the caveat of editorial control in respect of the bigger storylines concerning things like the return of Magneto or retconning his identity and so on and so forth. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on X-Men number 72. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.